Well, I always get excited when our Sunday groups, like we had one on New Year's, and now we have one on spring equinox, and nature means a lot. Nature means a lot in our practice. Nature meant a lot in Buddhist times. They were wanderers who stayed in forests of people who kindly offered their places for them. And you've heard me talk about when the Buddha begins things, often he just tells you to take the noble, the comfortable position, which happens to be under a tree or in a hut. And just the reminder that, this practice is natural, it's of nature, and we're just being really present with it. And since we have the spring solstice, and you might not know this, but today is actually the International Day of Happiness. But let's be honest, it's hard to know how to talk about happiness when there are so many hard things that are happening all around us. And we can't be glib, and we don't want to be. The truth is we're all in the midst of a national and international events that are painful and uncertain, divided, and sometimes they're quite frightening. And mindfulness is not about bypassing difficult things or putting on a mask of positivity, but rather it's about being fully with the reality of life and all of its complexities and sorrow and beauty. And when we increase the quality of our attention to begin to notice and appreciate moments which we might have missed before, that make us feel genuinely connected and awake and alive, our awareness expands, and so does our capacity for compassion and grounded joy. And so in this sense, happiness isn't just a collection of pleasant emotions or something that we feel when everything is going well. It runs a lot deeper than that. It's resilient and hopeful. So I decided to title our conversation tonight, Resilient and Hopeful. We can't really, we can acknowledge that there are heavy things that can help us view ourselves and others with more kindness. And it doesn't just change how we see things, it changes what we choose and how we respond. And ultimately that way we can be a force of transformation in the world, even or most, maybe even especially in the midst of hard times. And it's part of what we take up the practice for, or why we do our practice, is to be able to be present in hard times. As they say in the Tibetan Tonglen meditation, it's similar to our metta practice. May all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may the thoughts, words, and actions of my life contribute in some way to the happiness and the freedom for all. So one of the things that I wanted to share tonight particularly is that it has been a year that we bore witness to the violence of the March 16th Atlanta shootings last year. And it took the lives of 8 people, including 6 women of Asian descent. And the violence was a terrible reminder of the injustices and hatred perpetrated by white people against Asian American and Pacific Islanders and people in this country, who have been here over the centuries as students of Dharma, dedicated to the study and practice of interdependence, we stand with the people of Asian descent and all beings that are struggling against systemic oppression. And, we can understand that compassion and solidarity, along with wise action of many kinds, is vital in expressing the path of liberation. That the racist violence against of people of Asian descent has been part of the American history since the first Asians arrived here, and many of them bringing Buddhism with them. There was an act in 1875 excluding Chinese women, and the wartime Japanese internment camps, and Asian immigrants have fought for safety and basic rights in the U.S. for generations. And then, as we saw a lot last year with the targeting and scapegoating of Asian people from the highest levels of government, and we've seen hate crimes that have increased dramatically through the coronavirus. So I like to hold all Asians and Pacific Islanders here and worldwide in our hearts, offering the prayer at the root of loving kindness, of metta, that they be safe and free from harm. And we have multicultural Buddhist centers all over the country, and we're forever indebted to our Asian teachers and the lineage holders, and grateful beyond words for the long dedication of many Asian cultures in preserving the teachings and the practices of the Buddha and his disciples. And there's especially a responsibility to Southeast Asian Buddhist cultures, particularly the ones that are the stewards of Theravadan lineage. And that's the basis of insight meditation. And the Dharma directs us to investigate suffering and its causes. And we know that complex forces and conditions are at play in painful events like that one in Atlanta. And we understand that the conditioned experience to be both internal and external, and that it includes intersectional systemic conditions like racism and misogyny and classism and white supremacy, all of which we saw in those murders. And so with this in mind, I wanted to take a few minutes to share the website of the maywegather.org and show the 10-minute video that they culled down from their longer one, in which there was an entire ceremony with many Buddhist monks and nuns from all over the country who gathered in person, all wearing masks, to go through this ceremony together in acknowledging the Asian Americans and the Pacific Islanders. So I'm going to see if I can find it on my, see if I brought it up to YouTube. I tried to. Oh, here it is. It's on the website. All right, I'm going to share the screen, and then you can let me know if you can hear it. So hang on a minute. Here comes the screen sharing. And you'll see a bunch of other stuff probably at the top of my screen. But so this is the 10-minute short video of the ceremony. And it happened on June 24th last year, commemorating the 100th day after the Atlanta area shootings. And so they made a short video. Above it on the website, you'll see the whole, you can watch the whole thing. And this is a short version of it. Okay, once we get going, I'll see if I can expand it. I can. And you can tell me if you hear it. Oh wait, my speaker isn't turned on.
Source.
Okay, let's try it.
Today, May 4th, 2021, marks the 49th day since 8 people, 6 of them women of Asian descent, were killed in a mass shooting in Georgia. In many Buddhist traditions, the 49th day after death is an important moment of transition for both the deceased and the bereaved.
Our gathering brings together American Buddhist leaders from Chinese, Japanese, Khmer, Korean, Taiwanese, Tibetan, Sri Lankan, Thai, and Vietnamese Buddhist traditions. When our Chinese immigrant ancestors came to these shores in the 1850s, we faced exclusion and violence. Our Buddhist and Taoist temples desecrated and set ablaze. When our Japanese American forebears were herded into U.S. concentration camps in the 1940s, our priests were classified as a threat to national security. Our Buddhist faith deemed un-American. When our South and Southeast Asian parents and grandparents arrived in this country in the 1970s, many fleeing wars inflamed by the American military, we were told our cultures and Buddhist traditions didn't belong. In the face of nearly 2 centuries of xenophobia and systemic violence, Asian American Buddhists have long joined together to rebuild our communities. Piece by broken piece, we sutured the jagged edges of altars, statues, incense burners, and our very bodies and minds back together. We gather as Asian American Buddhists and allies in an expression of our fundamental interconnectedness. We do not suffer alone, nor do we heal alone. Only when we join together as a Sangha can we truly support each other's freedom.
The Buddha taught that even if you scour the world, there's not a single person who has not experienced loss from the death of someone they love. This gathering was prompted by the life and death of young A.U., a devout Korean-American Buddhist whose life was cut short at the aromatherapy spa in Atlanta. Her 2 sons remember her as a selfless person who stood up against discrimination and always advocated for treating people right. She reminds us that the antidote to a gunman's confused and deluded mind is the wisdom to see things clearly. Her offering to the nation includes this very gathering, which brings together an American Sangha from many lineages and many regions of our country. As with the life, death, and memory of George Floyd, we learn that the power of one life can touch the hearts of so many.
On the altar before us are 6 memorial tablets bearing the names of Young Ai-Yu, Wichao Ratanapakdi, Tommy Lay, Tien Min Lee, Penesaburo Oshima, and Sia Banning. These 6 individuals are just some of the many Asian American Buddhists killed in acts of violence from the 19th century to the present. Because the history of systemic anti-Asian violence in the U.S. includes erasure, many of the names of those killed have not been documented. We say the names of these 6 individuals while acknowledging and honoring the many other names not on the altar today. Grief and loss connect us across different ethnic and spiritual communities. The 7th central tablet commemorates all people who have lost their lives due to racial and religious animus.
I unite with you today as an Asian American who is also of African American descent. I invoke all our ancestors who have worked together and given so much so that today we can stand together in solidarity as one human family.
Sé que puede parecer imposible y incluso ridículo proponer la paciencia como respuesta ante todo este odio que estamos experimentando. Pero yo creo que sí se puede.
Together, we join today to repair the racial karma of this nation, because our destinies and freedoms are intertwined. And though the mountain of suffering is high, and the tears of pain fill the deepest oceans, our path compels us to rise up like a lotus flower above muddy waters.
Kintsugi is the Japanese art of repairing broken ceramics by mending the fractures with golden lacquer. The lotus flower, rising clean from muddy roots, symbolizes the purity and potential of the Buddha's awakening. The cracks in this kintsugi lotus will now be gilded by several of our monastics in attendance, transforming brokenness into beauty.
The work of repairing our communities requires remembering rather than hiding the ways in which we've been hurt. The careful rejoining process of kintsugi embodies our collective efforts to heal the wounds of racism and religious bigotry.
After an exhausting year, many are probably wondering, where can we find such spiritual strength? We need only look around, finding examples of spiritual strength in our families and ancestors who risked everything to build a brighter future. Examples like Tan Xiaojie, Feng Daoyou, Hyun Jung Grant, Park Sun Chong, Kim Sun Cha, and Yoon Young A. The strength they had to make America their home, working multiple jobs and navigating a new world for the sake of their families, was tremendous. Let us commit to matching their spiritual strength, their vidya, today and every day to come, as we remember and honor them. Thank you.
各位参别多谢兄弟，要我长报广播大谢谢，求也天道归别尊那把灭。
I came here to stand with you, with my ancestors, to love you deeply. Beyond time, beyond space. I cry with you as I have shed tears every day for my ancestors and your ancestors, past, present, and future. If we do not realize our kinship, deeper than skin, deeper than language, deeper than nation, I mean our kinship in true emptiness. That kinship. If we are able to, enough of us are able to recover and touch that wellspring of kinship that exists beyond time and space, we may realize a breakthrough that we're all praying for. I trust this breakthrough lies in the path of the Buddha Dharma as I understand it, and I keep learning.
The two long white threads emanating from the altar will be empowered with the blessings of these chants. These cords weave together the Buddha as represented on the altar, the Dharma as manifest in the Paritta chants, and the collective protection and interconnectedness of everyone participating in this event, in person and online. These threads will guide us as we leave this space to share our aspirations for peace and healing with the world.
So that to me in our looking at resilience coming out of the depths that these darknesses of winter and some of the difficulties that have gone on both globally. I'm losing my battery. I have to plug it in. There we go. Can't have a low battery. I'll disappear. So this feeling of darkness that seems to come in waves, and the being with each other in suffering, and the winter of the season, and now coming in toward the balance of the light and the dark. I have a song called The Three Jewels, and it's the woman, Barbara MacAfee, is a singer and songwriter and a voice coach. And her work fosters aliveness and joy and expression and connection. And the photographer is in the North Woods of Wisconsin. And she uses photography for ever-changing beauty of nature. And in this voice coaching client, she's describing very challenging times that she experienced as she recovered from injuries sustained in a major car accident. And she heard herself speak these words: "Every time I go into the darkness, I return with fistfuls of jewels." And the second line is, "Midnight velvet wraps all around me. Stars glitter brilliant above." And then there's this deep midnight winter kind of fluffy snowflakes floating all around. And the third line came to her: "Dreaming darkness, dreaming light." And she crafted it in a community song circle that she led in Minneapolis. And the group of about 40 people sang the first two parts. And then that was when she found that third line. And so I'm going to share it again if I can find which window I opened it in, or I'm just going to open it again. Let's see if this opens it. And for this, you can just close your eyes and listen, or you can look at it, seeing as how it was the photographer as well. So let me once again share the screen, and we can let some of what arose from seeing the last video feel embraced by this song, and let our hearts and minds be embraced in this. See if I can get it to play now. I have to move my Zoom pictures. Here we go. Is my speaker having a problem? Oh, there it is. Good.
I go into the darkness, I return with fistfuls of jewels. Every time I go into the darkness, I return with fistfuls of jewels. Every time Every time I go into the depths all around me, I reach stars with millions above. Every time I go into the depths all around me, I reach stars with millions above. Every time I go into the depths all around me, I reach stars with millions above. Every time I go into the depths all around me, I reach stars with millions above. Every time I go into the depths all around me, I reach stars with millions above. Every time I go into the depths all around me, I reach stars with millions above.
Thousands of people are reversing their type 2 diabetes with this 6-second method from
Something
the comfort
else
of their
is
own homes.
playing
Most
somewhere
people continue to take blood
on
sugar medications
YouTube.
because they've been brainwashed by the medical establishment to
There
believe
it is.
diabetes.
Ah, got out of there. That's the problem with opening up YouTube. You never know what's going to happen to it later when you're doing something else, especially in a Zoom meeting. So I'm sort of combining these thoughts and this discussion about darkness and spring equinox and full moons and being with darkness, acknowledging its movement into light. I've sort of gone around in circles, but not only is it spring equinox, which took place at 8:33, I believe, this morning. The beginning of a season filled with replenishing rain, we hope, especially in California. Here too, and showers and burgeoning wildflowers. And it marks a pivotal moment in astrology this year too, because the spring equinox is also it's exactly taking place on the moment that the sun enters Aries, the first sign of the zodiac wheel. And so it's like the astrological new year. Aries is a cardinal fire sign, and it initiates the sun's journey through each of the 12 signs. And so even though we've already celebrated, like we did in our group at New Year's Eve, the spring equinox is a time of release and renewal that can leave us feeling even more replenished and ready to start something new. And the spring equinox is encouraging us to go sort of after our wildest dreams, especially with it being with Aries. The full moon's opposition brings awareness to us externally, the opposition of the sun and the moon, and they shine a light on what's sometimes hidden from our view. And we can begin to see what's being revealed to us and what we want to do about it. And since Aries is the first sign in the astrological calendar, it can sometimes be thought of as like the baby. And so instead of intellectualizing its emotions, the baby screams and laughs and cries, and it doesn't have any prior experience to refer to and nothing to rely on but their natural born instincts. And so, sort of like a baby, Aries is also bravely, navigating this beautiful and terrifying world. And whenever he experiences a fresh one, we have the option to trust our heart and give it our best shot. So maybe we can let this new spring season encourage us to embrace faith and confidence in the mindfulness practice and give ourselves another chance to experience life as though we've never experienced it before, as though we're really trying everything for the first time, waking up in this very moment. And, Aries is it's the most assertive sign in the zodiac. And it's also a sign that's all about self-awareness. And knowing who we are is incredibly essential and can save us from putting ourselves in situations that don't align with who we are. The spring equinox is a time to remind us that putting ourselves first isn't selfish, but it's necessary, because how can we truly find personal fulfillment in anything if we don't know who we are first? Which is the very thing that the Buddha talked about in metta practice, of putting ourselves first and bringing loving kindness to ourselves. And so I think that this season is an active and dynamic one, and the days become longer and the flowers start to bloom again and the air just feels different. And the full moon message is to try things until they work for us. And I think that trying is sort of a magical word here, because oftentimes we don't like to do things that we aren't good at. And that's human nature. If we have an aspiration, we want to try. And we need to get out of our comfort zone and try new things. Sometimes new things work and sometimes they don't. There's a part of us that wants to be right, and maybe even that sort of Virgo perfect. But getting something done, you've heard me talk before about things can be good enough rather than perfect. And if we wait on perfect, we're going to miss the opportunity, and self-criticism can kill our creative expansion. And this is all very applicable in the Dharma to mindfulness, and to just get out there and try. Maybe all the turning of the seasons can be a renewal and an encouragement for us to sit down and take a walk and be present with this very moment, to be with whatever arises as clearly as we can and as softly as we can, letting mindfulness show us with its neutral eye the sorrow that may be present, and the joy that may be present, and the ability to handle what arises by encouraging calmness or tranquility and equanimity. And as we emerge from these dark times, what jewels will be tucked in our pockets, as she said in that song? What can we cherish in the darkness that isn't visible when the light's shining bright? What are we learning that we don't know yet? What new dreams are being woven from this particular dance of dark and light? And how are we being called to be of service to each other now? And may these nourishing questions and others like them burn like a steady candle in the deep darkness of this sacred and challenging time. So I think that's enough words. Let's just let the words settle down. I think I will end with one more song if I can find it. But if I can't find the right YouTube that I had open, I'll forget about it. Yep. Here it is. I won't I won't share the screen. Well, maybe I will because it's really pretty. It's a pan player and a harpist. And you can close your eyes or you can look at it because they happen to be in the fall, not the spring, but they have a beautiful place in nature that they go out to. And I think this is a calming way of letting the words settle down. So I hope you were able to hear that. All right. Now my noisy fan on my computer will settle down, I hope. And I just want to thank you so much for your practice and for being here, and whatever conversation we'd like to have,